What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life, in your business, with sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And sometimes we bring on guest speakers. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Doug Mitchell.
Bro, that intro was fantastic, man. I'm blown away. That was awesome. Thanks for having me on the show, man.
It is my pleasure, dude. You're the one. So before we get started, I get to introduce who Douglas is, and I'm excited to hear your story. This is going to be a fantastic podcast, by the way, everybody. So you guys know, Doug and I are in an Apex entourage together. I think you're an executive, aren't you? Yeah. So he comes down and he helps some of the peon entourage members like myself. Oh,
whatever. I'm just the one crazy enough to pay for executives.
Yeah. I was just starting. I was like, hey guys, I'm restarting my podcast. Is anyone, I'm looking for some help. And he reached out to me. He's like, hey, someone was like, hey, reach out to Doug, and Doug reached out to me, and he helped with, getting some setup, some lighting. He helped me with, he actually got me on his podcast, and he gave me some recommendations like, hey, you should, reach out to people and get them to come on as guest speakers. And in your different groups, in Apex, Arte, all that. And so he is one of, part of the DNA of what the Be the Difference podcast has become is because of Doug. So Doug, I appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised you're doing it to the level that you're doing it. I'm kind of jelly right now because I'm still using Zoom like a sucker, and here you are, got the whole setup going live and everything. I love it.
It's a good time, man. Don't get me wrong. Actually, I kind of like Zoom because with Zoom, when you can have the speaker automatically just pops in as the main person. Whereas I have to do all this like nifty stuff. I have to play around with it myself and drag and drop. I can do it instantly, but I have to do it myself.
Yeah.
So you guys know a little bit about Doug. Doug is a husband and father of 3. He's also the CEO of Argenta Field Solutions. It's an award-winning direct sales organization. Argenta's teams have earned over $35 million in commissions selling products via door-to-door and business-to-business, referrals, and social media. More recently, Doug launched Argenta Solar, Argenta Consulting, and the Building Great Sales Teams podcast, which I was a part of. And he's got some great guest speakers that go on there as well. So you guys should definitely check out his podcast. He also recently made his own energy drink for Argenta called Argenta Energy. Bro, you are making moves, man. I love it.
It's been a busy year for sure.
Yeah. It definitely has. It definitely has. So let's talk about where did you start? Let's go back to the beginning, Doug. When you got into the sales force or even to the workforce, what got you into sales? What got you into entrepreneurship? How did that transition happen for you?
So, it was probably in high school where I recognized I didn't really fit in. I didn't have real strong family ties. I lived with my aunt, and I wasn't part of like the popular group. I was in cross country and chess club, which is a weird combination. I wasn't exactly a nerd. I wasn't exactly a nerd because I did play basketball and football and all that, not through my senior year, but the first couple of years of high school. And so I had all these like eclectic group of, acquaintances and friends, but I was just kind of a loner. I ran the school's broadcast news station, right? I did, I made films for the film festival. I just, a lot of this random stuff, I knew that I had a chip on my shoulder in high school because, I moved out of my mom's house and into my aunt's when I was 12 and she didn't come for me. So I had the mommy issues, right? My dad was an alcoholic, passed away when I was 18. So I had the daddy issues, right? So got both. Great start in life. And so I decided, I'm moving out and I'm going to make something of myself. And none of them wanted me, so I'm going to prove everybody wrong, right? And so I moved out and I jumped around from job to job for probably about 6 to 8 months or so. Probably had like 7 or 8 different jobs, got fired from most. My problem was I was always trying to tell my supervisors, my boss, the owner of the company, how to do their job. Because I had this ability to see systems, operations, workflow, and how things should work. It was a natural talent that I had. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So obviously I was starting to flex those muscles already. And I got the opportunity in marketing to work for an entrepreneur as a marketing manager. He did nationwide newspaper campaigns in collectible gold, American Eagles certified, that whole stick. And I got really into data, right? Marketing campaigns. And I was able to take marketing campaigns that did like a 2-to-1 return. So, you spend 50 grand on the marketing campaign and you make 100 grand off of the first call with the leads, right?
Mm.
And so that was a 2-to-1 campaign. But after being there for like 6 months, I was able to do 4-to-1, 5-to-1, because I was a data freak. I was always diving into the data and figuring it out. And as I progressed with that company, he had me doing different things. I was shipping coins. I was communicating with the sales team that he had. I was putting together websites, marketing campaigns. I was moving furniture. I'm saying everything under the sun that he wanted me to do, I did. And so I learned a lot by osmosis, and it was really good for me. And then he started Argenta Field Solutions, which is my company now. And he wasn't able to get a profit out of it. So he asked me to start managing it. I guess he saw something in me that I didn't see. And he asked me to start managing it. I got it back to black, and then he wanted to sell it. He had put 200 grand into it, wanted to get his money back, basically break even. And so we struck a deal to where he's owner financed it to me. And so Argenta Field Solutions was an AT&T dealer for AT&T selling cable and internet and doing it door to door. So I had to learn the business pretty quick. I had to learn how to sell door to door. I did it for 3 months, and I realized, okay, there's a system to this, whether it be something as simple as a script or the next level, which is, okay, how do I develop an SOP so my people know how to train other people coming into the business, recruiting, everything that went into building the sales team. I started building out the systems for that. So I knocked doors for 3 months, and I never knocked doors again. And I hired a couple of key players. And then over the next couple of years, we blew up to 13 offices, 5 million in commissions a year, and 110 salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I always go back and kind of credit, Jordan has talent, Kobe has talent, but all this hard work they had to have in order to execute on it. And my talent was systems, Yeah, being that operator in the business, building out the training programs, building out the scripts, building out the opportunity structure, the comp plan. That was always what I was good at. So what I realized is it was developing sales programs. So I doubled down on that.
I love how you just, there was so much value in everything that you just talked about. Okay. He linked up with somebody. I mean, he found a lot of failure at the beginning, getting fired. And through that adversity, through that being fired, you realized I have a skill of seeing, how all these different pieces play together and how it should kind of operate in a more efficient way. Right. And I'm trying to help these people, but I'm coming off as a know-it-all kid and I'm brand new. So they're firing me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, maybe I got to do something else, right? And so you saw, like, through that adversity, you saw opportunity, right? So I think highlighting that, but then what you really did is you found a mentor that you didn't pay with money, but you paid more with services. Mm-hmm. You paid with helping out and doing things for him. But in return, he was teaching you, and you're like, hey, man, I started learning just through osmosis, just by being around that person, somebody that had a lot of experience, had a lot to teach you. You took it. You were young. You were at a point where you knew that this was something you wanted to do. And you were like, I'm just going to go this path. Like, this is the opportunity where it's leading me. And it led you to getting into Argenta and helping him create Argenta, which you eventually took over. Mm-hmm. So it's funny how when your path starts, right, you were doing all kinds of different jobs, hourly jobs, salary jobs, whatever. And it takes you all the way through this pathway. It's not like a direct line A to B, right?
Right.
It's like this like circle all over the place, and then to ending to where you ended up, you're like, hey, I believe this company. I want to we strike a deal, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're learning. You didn't even like completely know the business. You're just like, I'm just going to jump in and start learning, right? Get my feet, I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm going to get dirty. I'm going to learn this. And then I'm going to create systems because that's what I'm good at. And you kind of ended up exactly where you knew you needed to be all the way at the beginning, which was telling people what their sales processes should have been.
Yeah.
So what their systems and processes should have been.
So I had this stupid confidence, and I call it a stupid confidence because if I would have looked at myself now back then, I would have been like, you freaking idiot. But because I was like a bull in a china shop, right? But I had no fear of loss. I had no fear of failing. You know what I mean? And, I missed that part of myself, obviously, because I make a lot more educated, calculated moves now. But
I was the same way.
I remember, at the time that I decided to buy the company, which I had no money, mind you. I was making 30 grand a year as a marketing manager. And he wanted to owner finance to me for 200 grand. So that's I think I still remember the payment, 2130 a month is what the payment ended up being over 30 years with I think it was a 2-year balloon. And so I remember laying in bed next to my wife, and our daughter's 3 months old, and she just got a teaching job. So we're just like finally making it, right? And my daughter's 3 months old, and I tell her about the opportunity. I tell her, the numbers and what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to make millions of dollars and all this. And she's just like, we just got our heads above water. What are you doing? You know what I mean?
Oh man.
And she looks over at me. She grabs my face and looks at me and says, "Don't do this." And I get why. I understand why. You know what I mean? She comes from the knowing where your paycheck is going to come from life, and her dad was military. Her mom is a high school or a elementary principal. You know what I mean? Very conservative in that sense. And I completely understand why. And then she had also seen me go from sales job to sales job, And so I said, okay. And then the next morning I went in and signed the deal. And I tell that story all the time, and people are just like, you didn't listen to your wife? And I was like, no, I didn't listen to my wife. You know what I mean? I was, what were we, a year and a half into our marriage? Like, no husbands listen to their wives that early on. We don't get smart till later on in life. But
that's
it worked
crazy.
out.
Yeah, no, it worked out massive. And I bet you right now she's probably very thankful that she's like, baby, I'm so glad that you did not listen to me.
Yeah.
That was the worst advice in the only time I ever gave you bad advice. But the worst advice ever.
But the beautiful thing about that is it's come full circle. And so she was an educator for 10 plus years, and now she just opened up her own local tutoring service for homeschool kids. So she has her own business now. It's really cool to see her come full circle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure she got a lot of inspiration from watching you take that leap, right? And that's what happens is that people close to you, friends, family, associates, loved ones, partners, when you see them achieve the impossible and you look at them, you're like, you know what? Like, I see what they're doing. They're just doing the work. They're not doing anything special. It's not like he's a rocket scientist and he's over here doing advanced physics.
Yeah.
He's just doing the work. It becomes more achievable. And then the belief starts to come. Your belief in yourself is almost like it almost bleeds into them. Right. And so now they're like, I can do this too. Right. So in essence, I mean, she kind of just got it by almost through contagious, just by being in contact with you.
Right.
I love it.
And so what's funny about that though, is like, she had this thought, she had this idea, and she had talked to me about it before. She's like, these teachers are making 6 figures doing this, and they're going from public school to private, not private school, but private tutoring. And she was like, they're making good money. And I'm like, do it. You should go all in. This is how you can do it and everything. And I kind of gave her a little roadmap. And then a couple months went by, and she goes to an Apex Live event. And by the end of the Apex Live event, she was all in. She was starting her business. And I'm like, that's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, everything they said on stage, I said the same exact thing to you.
Yeah, I
in
said
our
the same
bedroom.
things. They just said it better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That happens. That happens actually quite frequently with Lexi and I. And it happens on the reverse side too. Like she'll say something and then somebody else will say, and I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this. And she's like, I literally told you the same exact thing like yesterday. And I'm like, not the same though. It's not the same.
And that's why you should bring in guest speakers to train your team.
Yeah.
They may say the same things that you say, but for some reason, hearing it from somebody else, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Hearing the same thing. It's also like the repetitive factor. Some people, they have to hear something 5, 6, 7, 10 times before it finally clicks. And they're like, man, this is actually kind of a simple concept,
Yeah.
And if they hear it said the same way or said in a similar way, just different verbiage, it's like, it like kind of expedites that, right? Like it gets through that learning curve a little bit faster. So
Yeah, absolutely.
no, I agree 100%. So talk to us about, I want to talk about you door knocking for 3 months. What was that like, bro?
So I know it's like, it's a, I'm not gonna say look down on, but it's like, oh no, I can't knock doors,
Yeah.
One, I had I started out at the top, right? Because I was managing the business. I was taking it over from another manager. So right away I had motivation. I had two forms of motivation. One, I was going to run this thing and expand it and make a bunch of money, right? And when you first get into sales, you're just thinking about your own income, your personal income, the commissions. You're not thinking about this thing you're trying to build, which you may not be trying to build something. You may just trying to make good money. And so that was the first motivation, was to build something. And then the second motivation on top of that was to gain the respect of my guys. All right, this guy doesn't have to knock doors, but he's going to learn how to do what we do so that he can run the business better, And so, yeah, obviously I went out and shadowed guys after that. It wasn't just the 3 months. I went out and shadowed them in the field, made sure that their pitches were going well, their conversion rates and all that good stuff. But it's exactly what you think it is, especially when weather gets involved, 100-degree heat, And so when we recruit new people, we tell them coming in, like, hey, we try to scare them away from the position, right? Especially now that we're doing solar and all of our guys are like 6-figure producers. We want to scare them away from it so we don't waste our time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it is very tough.
Those gates in on the front end.
Yeah. But it's like everything else. It's just, okay, yes, door to door is tough, but once you get the customer engagement, or once you get them engaged with what you're pitching them, that's going to be a better customer than any other form of sales.
Yeah.
Period. Because that customer was not interested in what you were selling before you knocked on their door. And every now and then you get ones that are, but what happens is, you get lead gen, or you get a lead from somewhere. They're shopping you, or they're looking at other vendors that are selling the same thing you're selling, right? And then you get into that race to the bottom if you don't have a quality product.
Yeah.
And so what door-to-door does for sales and businesses in general, it brings you stickier, higher quality customers, because they're 100% qualified and they're not shopping around. And so they don't have all these offers coming from other companies right after they sign up. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I love about it. And it's the cheapest form of customer acquisition. You know what I mean? Like, really, obviously not for me being the owner of the sales org, but for the individual. Like, if you have a product and you need to take it to market and it's a home service in particular, a door-to-door is the easiest way. I know in insurance, that's still part of the model, is door-to-door. So
yeah, there are insurance companies that do door-to-door, and then there are companies that and like, I have agents that go door knocking, but they do it off of leads. So somebody that did sign up, but they can't get a hold of them on the phone. So then they'll go out, they'll actually just door knock. I'm like, hey, whoa, wow, you're alive. Okay. Hey, yeah, I'm glad. Let's go ahead and sit down. I'm the advisor that's been assigned to help you out. So you door knocked for 3 months. What was the biggest thing that you learned during that time frame? What was an important takeaway?
Probably how to build rapport. So because I was such a numbers centric person, such a system centric person,
Uh-huh.
I wasn't a very good conversationalist.
Yep.
And so that's where I had to develop my conversation skills. And then once I realized, okay, it's a numbers game. It's about the actions you take before the sale, not the actual sales. Um, then I was able to execute on a high level, right? But I wasn't executing because I was a salesman and I had salesmanship. That was the other thing I learned too, was that you didn't have to be a good salesman to do well in door to door. And that's my philosophy in any kind of sales, because I really do believe if you have a good sales program, anybody can operate within it. Maybe they're not going to be an all-star, but they can make a living.
Mhm. Now, and you have a system or a sales program that you teach other companies, or you go and
Mhm.
like help them and with their systems and processes. Talk a little bit about how you like develop that and just a once over kind of bird's eye view of what you do for other companies and their sales programs.
Yeah, it was so weird the way it was developed, because it literally took me 45 minutes, and that's because I'm a slow typer, right? So after 12 years in this business, I realized, okay, I'm around these high level entrepreneurs. They keep asking me questions about building sales teams, about recruiting, about scripts, about pitches, about sales processes, and I have all the answers for them. This is my zone of genius. I realize this is my zone of genius.
Mhm.
Before I was just a door to door guy, and then I realized no, there's more to this. And so I went on a trip. We call them PJ trips in Apex with Ryan Stewman.
Mhm.
And so you go on a private flight with them, and the substance behind the trip is you're in the air for 6 hours with high level entrepreneurs plus Ryan Stewman, and you guys are masterminding, right? This is my big ass problem, and then everybody gives a solution, kind of thing. That's the very basic principle of mastermind. And then of course, depending on what he's doing, and most of the time he's speaking, so you go to the event and you get to see him speak and all that. So it is a really, like, ROI is huge on this thing, and I
Mhm.
think I paid $5,000, right? And of course, if you're into this marketing, right, you get the pictures on the plane, you know. And so we go out to New Jersey, and it's actually a consulting trip. And this client paid $100,000 for Ryan and his team to come in and do consulting with them for one day. And I'm actually wearing their hat right now. Funny story, but me and the CEO are good friends now, or the owner of the company are good friends now. But
Mhm.
anyways, so I found out about this before the trip, and I was like, hey, I messaged Ryan, because at that time you had to pay him directly, right? I messaged Ryan. I was like, hey, I heard y'all were doing a consulting. I just want to be a fly on the wall. I'll hold the camera. I'll carry a bag. I don't give a crap. I want to see how this works because I'm interested in consulting someday. And so he messaged me back. He's like, you do sales, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, do you think you can do a sales training for a credit repair company? I'm like, heck yeah, I can. I actually used to sell credit repair back in the day, And so, and the sales trainings that I've been through are all general, right? It's not everything specific to door to door. So I was able to tweak some of them to create a sales training for them. And then I went into basically, their meetings and how they operate, their how they role play, or they didn't role play at all. So I taught them how to role play. Um, I worked with the sales manager on how to create an opportunity structure for their guys to where they can move up in the company, but more importantly, they can sell more premium products, right? And so I developed an action plan, sent it over to him, and I got good feedback from Ryan. I got great feedback from Drew B. Wilson and Thomas Keenan that worked with them at the time, and so that gave me my ability to recognize, hey, I belong in this space. I can do this for other companies. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so when I went home, it was just on my mind. It's like, how am I going to operate? I can't just go in and say, oh, I'm a consultant, wear a suit and tie, and like give them overarching, like strategies. I've got to go in and get an audit their sales program,
Yeah.
and then inject everything that I know how to do well into their sales program, and then leave them with a better sales program when it's all said and done, and actual metrics to look back on and say, hey, he increased this, and this, right? And so I was like, okay, how do I audit it? Well, the first thing I thought of was when I went to my offices, because I had 13 offices at one time, when I would visit my offices, I would audit that office. So I thought about the office audit first. And I was like, what is that? And I pulled it up and I went through it. And here's what I came up with. There's 5 parts to every great sales program. There's compensation. Is it simple? Is it rep facing? Is it comparable? Is it competitive? What does it take to make 6 figures? And are you showing them that on it? And then when you're doing an opportunity meeting or an interview, can you hand it to them?
Mhm.
And so it's in writing and they don't have to worry about how much they're going to get paid or if they're going to get paid at all. And your logo's on it. You know what I mean? To where you're branding yourself from day one, right? Opportunity. All right, we've got a 6-figure position. That's great. But most people last about 3 to 6 months in a 6-figure position that is sales and doesn't have an opportunity. So I don't have a next level that I can go to, right? And
Mhm.
insurance builds this out beautifully. You guys have crazy levels, you know what I mean? And so,
Hierarchies and everything. Yeah.
yeah. So they've got to be able to see that. And so on the front side is the compensation plan. On the back side is what I call an opportunity structure that
Okay.
shows them, all right, this is the entry level where I'm at now. I have to do X, Y, and Z to get to a trainer. And then once I'm a trainer, I have to do X, Y, and Z. So X is usually sales volume. Y is usually like time with the company, and then Z is leading other people. You know what I mean? And so if I prove I can train well and I can create more trainers, then I can move up in the company, right? It's very multi-level marketing ish, but that's what works, right? Duplicating yourself, and you're selling an actual product, not recruitment into the company, right?
Yeah.
And so on that opportunity piece, how do they become leaders? Can they get paid for it? Can they build a business? And does it show them how? And then has an ownership opportunity been communicated to them?
Yeah.
Because you want to be able to catch everybody. You want to catch the person that's going to come and tear it up for 6 months because there's a profit on that.
Yeah.
You want to catch the person that's going to be with the company forever and eventually be a partner in the company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or a regional director or a vice president of sales or a region of the country,
Mhm.
but that a lot of entrepreneurs don't take the time to build that out and actually look at the numbers tied to it so they know that they can actually accommodate it, right?
Mhm.
And so that has to be done. The next piece is development. And it's the same deal all the way down. Is it in writing? Is it rep facing? Do they see how you develop them? And the way that I do it now is I attach the development to the opportunity structure.
Okay.
So if I got an entry level salesperson coming in, right next to that shows them, okay, you have to go through X, Y, and Z training in order to start selling. And then you got to go through our Freedom Training 2.0, our Train the Trainer, and our Product Knowledge 2.0 training in order to get to trainer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is all right in front of them to where they can see it. Okay, I got to execute here, here, and here, and I can get promoted next level, make more money, or get into leadership, right? That's the development piece. So you're developing them as a sales rep, as a trainer, as a leader, and then eventually as a human, right? I think you and I talked about this a little bit.
Mhm.
We bring people in like we had a meditation coach come in and do a training for us. We had Earl Capul. He's a heavy hitter in solar, but he also has a company called the Gratitude Mindset where he teaches you how to practice gratitude daily. We had them
Mhm.
come to the company. Easier Accounting, talk about LLCs and how to create a tax shelter for 1099 salespeople. These are things that, investing, real estate, crypto, all the experts in those fields, we have them come in, we do a company-wide call, we record it, and then now we include it in our training. If that
I
makes
like that.
sense.
I like that. Bringing
Here's
other
the
people in for those kind of things. I love that. I think that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
because we're not experts on real estate investment or insurance, you know what I mean? Or insurance as an investment. We're not
Yeah.
experts on any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's the first 3 parts of it. That's COD. The whole acronym is CODOC. There's operations, and then the most important is culture behind that. And so I audit their sales program based on that. And then I have 10 major documents that I create in that sales program, or if they already have it, I modify it, whatever the case is. And so their sales program isn't just on a few sheets. It's on, you've got the system stuff inside of, I typically use Google Drive is the easiest way to transfer that to the client.
Mhm.
And then you've got the actual documents that they operate off of. And then you've got the SOPs that we leave them with to operate off of as well, you know? And so it's always nice to be able to open up a folder and see your sales program in that folder. And then we organize it into CODOC, which is CODOC. And it's weird. Like, I like acronyms,
Yeah,
but I also recognize that they don't have to be real words. They can just be things that sound, CODOC, it sounds very military,
it does.
right? And so like everything I do now is hashtag CODOC, you know?
Yeah, no, I like it. It's like DFAC. Everyone's like, what the hell's a DFAC? Oh, it's a dining facility. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's like,
It's just an easy way to remember it.
yeah,
And
they work, man.
understand it.
They
Yeah.
work well.
Yeah.
That's why I think that's why the military uses them so often, is just because of how easy they are to it's like having the same language, right?
Yeah.
You get the same language and that understanding, and that's a basic function of culture, is having a similar language and similar words that everyone's using, saying the same things. But go ahead.
Yeah. So that's the consulting tenets that I operate on. And it just makes it easy to explain what I do. Because, it drives me nuts. The coaches or consultants that come in and they're just like, we're just going to improve your systems and your overall profit. You know what I mean? I'm like, how are you going to do it? Well, this is how I do it. This is my SOP. You know what I mean?
And now, did you develop that right at the beginning and you've been doing it, or have you kind of crafted and honed it over time? Have you changed it at all?
So I crafted and I honed it over the 10 years that I was operating different sales products, different sales forces,
Yeah.
B2B, telemarketing. I did all that over the last 10 years. And so I've executed on different versions of all of this. All it was is when I decided to make it into a consulting product, I had to give it a name. You know what I'm saying? I had to give it a structure, because that's how I operate.
You already knew it. You already
Yeah.
knew it. You've been doing it for
It just kind of poured out of me when I did it too. And I'm writing my book right now, and you can guess how many chapters there are in it.
There you go, right there,
Yeah.
man. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. What's it like? What was it like hanging out with Ryan Stewman?
Man, he's just a guy's guy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he rides four-wheelers. He's got all boys. He just had a baby girl, you know. He's a parent, he's a husband, you know. But one of the things, you know, I've never been a big celebrity guy. So whenever I first came into, first I hired Ryan to speak to my sales team.
Mm.
I paid 10 grand for him to speak to my sales team. And then I went to MDM and realized Apex existed. And so I said, hey, can we move that 10 over to Apex? Because executives at the time, I think it was like 40 or 50 grand. And he was like, yeah, we can move it over into Apex, and then I'll still speak for you. So that was the first thing. That was my first impression of Ryan. It was like giving value right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He didn't have to do that. I would have foregone him speaking for me to get that credit towards Apex executives and then just make monthly payments, you know? And so, but one of the things I've recognized about him is his ability. He's just, if you talk to him, yes, there's an experienced business owner right in front of you, right? And he's going to give you advice that you're going to be able to go and capitalize on right away. But I've seen him take a new concept and dive into it, and then like a week later be an expert on it. He is a consumer of information, which I just don't understand how you do. I can't. He's an amazing reader. You know, he reads like 5 books a month or something like that. So seeing him consume new information, like crypto was a big one. Dude's made millions on crypto already. Like who does that? Who goes from running a sales and marketing organization and a mastermind and then decides, hey, this crypto stuff looks pretty good. Let me pick it up, and just crushes it.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, that's not fair. But what it is he's an amazing consumer of information, and he's able to execute really well on that. And so as far as hanging out with them, like if you were just like at a bar or at a sporting event or something like that, and he was sitting next to you, you would never know it, because he doesn't brag like that. You know what I mean? Within the network, he does, because he wants to inspire you and push you to execute the same way he has. But a normal conversation. It is. It's about the wife, the kids, what we're doing next week, what business, we're executing on, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
He's a good dude.
That's awesome, man. I aspire to be on stage at MDM one year.
Absolutely.
That's how I got into Apex. I went to MDM. I got a ticket from somebody while I was in Arte, because I'm in Arte, and somebody in Arte was like, "Oh, going to MDM's in Dallas, but I got this extra ticket. Anyone want it?" And I was like, you know what? F it, I'll take it.
Let's
I was
do
like,
it.
I was like, I'll go. So I went to MDM this past year, and I listened to Ryan. I was like, he actually gives really good practical tactics, very like applicable things that you can do today to like change your business. It's not like high level, like macro looking at a problem. It's like the nitty gritty. Hey, do this daily, do this. And so I started doing that. I had been podcasting before, and I got away from it because I just started my new business, and I started doing it every day. And I started to tag him on it because I was like, dude, I appreciate you giving me the inspiration at MDM. And he was like, hey man, you in Apex? And I was like, nah, I'm in Arte. I just went to MDM for President Argon. He was like, well, you should join Apex. And I'm like, I'll think about it, And so I kept tagging him. And finally one day I just got bold, and I messaged him. I was like, hey bro, I'm going to be on stage at MDM, just so you know. I'm like, like a winky, like blowing kiss face. just being a real like confident asshole.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh really? You in Apex yet? It's like,
and that's one of
he's right.
Yeah. So Milet, obviously Ryan's in Milet's group, and what's his name?
Andy Frisella.
Yeah, Frisella.
Yeah.
They're friends. They speak on the same stages and everything. But everybody else that he puts on that stage, or everybody else that he puts on live events, or they're all in Apex. He doesn't put people on that aren't in Apex. And he talks about that too. And I think that's awesome. And I think Eric Thomas is the only one that was at MDM that isn't associated necessarily with Ryan. He paid him straight up to come. You know what I mean? And before that, when he was trying to work it out to where Tom Brady was there, it was Tom Brady. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, MDM, he's going to bring those headliner type guys, but for the most part, he only puts on Apex people, which I love. And he develops them from the program develops them from the ground up. You know what I'm saying? That's what I love about it too, is if he, and God forbid something happens to him tomorrow, the program will live on. There's too many amazing leaders within the group that will make sure that it carries on. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I love about that group.
No, I mean, I love it. I love it. So you got to spend time with them. You got to kind of test. It's almost like getting the test bike, you're like going out there testing it. They're like, yeah, you did pretty well. So you're like, dude, I'm doing this. So you do it. You kind of, you brand Kodak and you start doing it. How is that going now? How many business clients are you working with, and how's it been? How's that journey been?
So I did that. And then, I started winding down my AT&T division because we were going to go all in on solar. Right. And so now I'm back in my business. And so, what that enabled me to do, and this was like 8 months ago, I said to myself, hey, I'm making X in, Argenta, right? And I want to do this consulting thing, but it's more of a like side hustle. So I got to make sure if I make X in Argenta, then when I'm consulting, I need to make double that, or else I shouldn't be taking time away from my main thing, right? And so what it did right away is it gave me a high barrier of entry, right? And most people, when they start out in coaching, they're like, $100 an hour, $150 an hour, or something like that, or they have a program, but the program, when you divide it up, a $2,000 program by 15 calls, it's not much per hour. So I told myself right away, if it's 1 hour, it's going to be 1,000, because I'm making this over in my business. So it's got to be double what I'm making. Right. And then I said, okay, I'll put together a few packages, but I'll make sure that if I have to travel, it's going to be 10,000 to 25,000, what I'm saying, in the package. And so what I did when I built this out, I said to myself, like, I'm not going to do it unless it's the right client and it's worth my time, and so many people get up in arms when you say stuff like that, but then don't hire me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that simple.
Yeah.
Because I have my main thing. It's different when that's all you do. You know what I mean? And now you've got to make sure that, hey, I price low enough to get the client and high enough to make it worth my time.
Mhm.
And so in doing that, I wasn't seeking consulting clients. And honestly, most of the people that came to me were in Apex. So I would give them an hour, 2 hours, even more time than that, just to kind of like test the model. And so I did that with 50 plus people within Apex and outside of Apex in some situations. And I charged some of them, but not much. I was testing it and testing it and testing it. And then I started getting the feedback and I started getting the reviews and I started getting the responses and everything. And then people giving gratitude within the group, giving gratitude outside of the group. And then the podcast, I started the podcast. The podcast started blowing up, started doing well. So now my price was my price. I created my authority in the process of testing it out. And then by the time I actually said, hey, which was a couple months ago, hey, I'm taking 3 clients per quarter and the packages are 25 each. Right. And so Q4, I've got one client left or one client spot left. And then Q1, I don't have any of next year. You know what I'm saying? Because I built that authority out. And but the beautiful thing about that is each client is 50 hours, right? So it's 150. It's 150 hours over a quarter, which is roughly almost 4 weeks. So 1 week a month I'll be consulting, and the rest I can be in my business. That makes sense.
No, that makes sense. I like that model actually.
Yeah.
Now, so you just transitioned from AT&T to solar. How'd that transition go?
It was rough.
Let's talk about. I like it. Challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love talking about challenges and growth.
So first off, we pulled out a door-to-door in AT&T. We had this referral-based model, which was beautiful. Apartment complexes. One of my MDU director at the time and I had developed it. So he got it from another company and he started doing it within my company. I said, go for it. Let's see what this looks like. Then once he developed it and he started making 6 figures, I was like, okay, let's actually write this out. Let's make a sales program for it. You know what I mean? And so that's his ability was executing on it. My ability was writing the program for it. So we wrote the program for it. We started hiring people. We got up to 7 guys. And at one point we were trending to 2.5 million in commissions with 7 guys. And so it was a very efficient program. And in terms of being a CEO and having a division that operates on its own, it was incredibly efficient. And so, we were just doing the back office stuff, the payroll, the recruiting, the training systems, the support, all that stuff. But my team was doing that. In terms of my time, it didn't take a lot of my time. So I had this division in my company that was grossing 2.5 million, which was awesome. And so we pulled out a door-to-door and then, all right, we're doing door-to-door on the solar side. All right. And now we're getting a little traction. We're making some money. For the most part, we're losing money because the installs got dragged out, And so the way that I'm building my solar division is, and this is my whole company, is on our mission and our core values. Operating with integrity and achieving freedom are 2 of the big ones, right? And you can't achieve freedom if you don't have at least a base commission. So we do a base against commission. Our guys are W-2. And so they get a certain amount every week, no matter what, right? Whether they're solar installs and we get paid a commission or not. So we were bleeding on that side. And then we go to MDM 22 and my MDU director, after being warned several times, violates our core values again. And so I had to make a hard decision to terminate him, knowing that his team was pretty loyal to him, despite the fact that he violated our core values. And I ended up losing about $1.5 million from doing that in that division. So now my solar division is barely keeping up, and my AT&T division is winding down, I like to call it, but it's falling apart, right? And so I've got to figure out, all right, do I try and revive this, or do I go all in on solar and just make it work? And so I went all in on solar. I made it work. I got it back to profit. And on the AT&T side, we're still doing some business over there. It's probably going to be about $500,000 a year. And, but it's a couple of guys that have been in it for a while and execute at a high level on it. And I don't have to worry about them. They're managed pretty passively, kind of, I'm sure like your team, where you don't have to be on top of them all the time. And so solar, it's a whole nother animal, right? It's kind of like a real estate transaction in the sense that, all right, you sell the customer and you're probably not going to get a check for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 100 days, because the real estate transaction, well, it's the install, it's the permitting, it's the installer having the bandwidth to be able to install all that stuff. And so that stretches out your cash flow and you've got to make it work in between. So I had to pull investments. I had to do everything I could, pull all my money out of my personal account to float the business and everything. And like I said, a couple of months ago, we finally got to where we were okay again. And then I doubled down on consulting, and that filled my personal coffers back up. You know what I'm saying? So we're finally head above water again, and this goes to show I've been doing this for 12 years. 30 million in commissions sound great. You know what I mean? But when you make pivots like this and you base them on core values, a lot of people don't talk about the consequences of that, And so I think it's important to communicate that to the entrepreneur community and make sure they understand, hey, if you say you're going to operate on core values and you execute on that, you may lose 7 figures. You know what I mean? From that.
You have to stick by your core values and your culture, because the second you go against a standard, it's no longer the standard. And the new standard is that you can break any standard. Yeah. And so it's that double-edged sword, man. And it's difficult and it's challenging. And sometimes it's even gut punching.
Yeah, it really is.
But it's the right move every single time. And every single time when you get through it, you do it. I'm sure looking back, you're like, man, I'm really glad I did that, because 100%. Of how damaging it would have been had you not.
But in the middle of it, I was questioning it.
Oh yeah.
I was like, why didn't you just look the other way? You know what I mean? And you wouldn't have to be worried about where your mortgage is coming from next month. You wouldn't have to be worried about your guy's payroll. You know what I'm saying? You wouldn't have to be worried about, hey, you're in executives and you're paying 50 grand a year for this mastermind, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you may not be able to make the payment, And so it's a real part of entrepreneurship. People love to get on social media and podcasts and talk about all the wins and everything, but the real part is that struggle, and being transparent and having integrity when you're talking about these things. Because I do feel like not enough people talk about it. They just don't, and they should, because a brand new entrepreneur needs to know these things. That just because you made $1 million in a year doesn't mean it's over and you're on easy street. Shit, that's when stuff gets really hard.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's so many little daily fires to put out and hurdles to overcome and difficult decisions to make when you get to where you're an entrepreneur, especially in every level of entrepreneur. It's like there's always those fires to put out, and as you get higher, the fires just get bigger. So if you try to skip, if you tried to skip like all the levels that you went through, you would not have been able to handle the challenges you went through this year. The reason you could handle them is because of all the challenges you've already been through and the decisions you made and being able to get through it. It like strengthened you. It got you to the point. It gave you skills necessary in order to be able to do that. And I don't think that people realize that. Like the amount of fires that I put on a daily basis now is ridiculously more. Like they hit me harder and they hit me more intensely, like in terms of time and consistency, almost every day. Versus when I wasn't when I didn't have Delta Financial, I wasn't an IMO president. It wasn't even close to that. It was like the smallest stuff ever. And so, well, comparatively, what I know now, I'm like, man, it was so much easier before. Man,
and the income doesn't always reflect that.
It does not. Saying? It does not.
Yeah. Sometimes
the impact does. The impact. 100%. And so no, I can agree and I can sympathize exactly. I know exactly what you mean, man. There's some definitely difficult decisions you have to make.
You got to have a strong mission to get through that, know, and our mission at Argenta is we help each other achieve freedom. And the minute that I shut down, the minute that I give up, you know, my team can no longer accomplish that, at least not through the medium that I've given them.
Yeah.
And I can't let them down.
Well, dude, this has been an awesome podcast, bro. I want to do a part 2 with you because I didn't even get to really talk about a lot of the challenges you had in your personal life from the time that you told your wife, hey, no, I'm going to do this even though you told me not to. Go all the canyons you had to cross up at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And just really dig in more on your sales training and talk more about that. But want to wrap this up. In wrapping it up, what is something that you've learned over the last 12 years that, knowing what you know now, that you could look back and say, man, this is probably the biggest key takeaway. If I could tell my younger self this would be it.
Integrity over everything. So if you say this is your mission, you say this is your core values, holding those with integrity. If you make a commitment, holding that with integrity, and I think this would be it. It's like telling the truth no matter what, even if it's bad, right? Mm-hmm. Look at the end of 8 Mile when Eminem has that moment.
Yes.
The end of 8 Mile, and he's just like, this is everything that's wrong with me. Now what?
Yeah. Tell them something they don't already know about me.
If you don't feel like Superman after you do some shit like that, and it's like, I have nowhere to go but up from here, know? Yeah. And I've been doing that the last couple of years where I've put my story out there. I've been honest about it. And I've been honest about what it takes to get to where I am now in terms of as a man and having it and operating with integrity and the legacy that I'm trying to build. Like, I didn't get here without integrity. That's just, it's been my biggest thing for a long time. It's the second core value in my company. We operate with integrity. It's a core value in my personal life too. And I want it to be a core value in my legacy to where, all right, these are my values. I want to pass those on through my purpose and my passion, and which is my business and things like barbecue and rugby and all the fun stuff. Right. But I want them to flow all the way through to the eventual, the things, right, which is the 100 acres that my family has in our family forever, right? And I want them to know that I got there because of those core values, and the biggest one being integrity all the way through.
I love that. And I was just telling somebody about that. That specific example from 8 Mile. I saw it at the Lex the other day.
Yeah.
Because it's like the most raw captured moment of true transparency. Just open, raw transparency. That's the biggest F you moment, right? It's like, come at me, bro.
Yeah. What are you going to say about me now?
Yeah, exactly. Got nothing to say.
I'll say my most engaging posts on social media, or I'm gonna write a book on Kodak, building great sales teams. The next book I'm gonna write is on building an intentional legacy, and I know that one's gonna sell more copies because it's about being human, what I'm saying, and overcoming your flaws, I guess you could say. And so and people want to see that, if you want to build an attractive character online, be vulnerable and tell them how you fucked up and how you overcame it.
Yeah.
You do that right there, you're going to get shares, you're going to get likes, you're going to get people want to engage with you, want to reach out to you. Yeah. And your product doesn't matter at that point. They just want to be a part of you.
Well, no, it's true. It's also very authentic, and it's raw, right? All right. Last question. I love this one too, because it's going to tell me a little bit about you. You can pick 3 people to break bread with, learn from, gather as much information from. They can be alive or dead. Who are those 3 people?
First one's got to be Jesus Christ.
I
know that's the answer. I know that's the answer. Everybody
no one said that. No one said
really? That. Oh, shoot. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. The earthly embodiment of God, He's got a lot of answers for me that I've been screaming up at the heavens since I was 5 years old, why?
It'd be funny. I think that conversation would mostly be him just asking you questions back.
Right. Exactly.
It would just be him repeating questions back to you to make you stop and think and be like, huh.
I'm an
Thanks
analytical.
for that.
Yeah. My father-in-law used to say, Doug, I don't understand why you believe in God. You're a practical, analytical person. You know what I mean? And then I was like, that's exactly why I believe in him, because none of this can be explained otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it'd be Jesus Christ. The second one would probably be Zig Ziglar. I've been
Zig
I'm,
Ziglar. That's a good one. I like that one.
I'm a massive Zig Ziglar fan. I quote him all the time. I love that dude. And I love that dude, and I've never even met him. You know what I'm saying? Just the impact he had on the world was second to none. And, I recognize that a lot of concepts started with like the Napoleon Hills and Andrew Carnegie's, but I feel like Zig Ziglar packaged it and delivered it in such a way that we could all digest. You know what I'm saying?
No, I agree with that.
And so that would be the second one. And then, man, I had a really good answer for the last one. And it was just like one person. It was a one person question instead of three.
Mhm.
And I'm blanking on it. But the one that the person that keeps popping up in my head is my grandmother. And yeah, my grandmother, because she passed away when I was like 25. And we used to have lunch like once a month because I lived in Corpus Christi, Texas. She lived in Rockport, Texas. We'd meet in the middle. And we had this just weird connection, not weird, but like special connection. And it's crazy because my daughter has it too, even though she was only alive for a couple of years. She met my daughter a couple of times and then she passed away. And my daughter has this picture of her in her room. And for whatever reason, she's always been connected to her. But anyways, I would love to talk to my grandma about her life before grandkids, because I never considered it. I never was curious about who she was before that until later on in life. And I realized where I come from, you know what I mean? And so I would want to just sit down and have a conversation with her about her childhood, her teenage years, everything that she went through, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I'm very curious about that, and just, family heritage and lineage and stuff.
Yeah.
Be very curious.
I love it, man. Those are three fantastic picks. I always get new ones. No one's been repeated yet. Although
Really?
I did get family. I did get family before. They did not specifically say their grandmother. They just said family members. So
I gotcha.
I'm not going to say it's been a repeat. Doug, thank you so much for coming on board, coming on the podcast. This has been a massive value. We're definitely going to have to do an episode, a follow-on episode, and do this again. If anyone wants to learn more about you or find your podcast, how can they reach out to you? How can they connect with you? How can they follow you?
So they can find everything they need at txbizdad.com. The podcast is also buildinggreatsalesteams.com. And so we're on everywhere you can consume podcasts. And txbizdad.com if you want to learn more about solar, about the company, any of that stuff, about me. All my social media platforms are txbizdad as well.
Absolutely. Well, Doug, it's been a pleasure, brother. And if you are watching this, that means that you definitely got value if you watch until now. So what I ask is that you also share this content so that we can spread by word of mouth and we can get to more people. We can increase our audience and we can share this value out to more people. This has been the